The galaxy had many hunters, but only one name was spoken with fear across 100 worlds. She was called Kilira, the alien Huntress, and no prey had ever escaped her. No beast of the wild, no soldier of war, no fugitive hiding in shadows had ever lived after she marked them. Her legend grew with each hunt. Villages whispered of her eyes that glowed in the dark. Cities trembled when her ship appeared in the sky. She was a shadow in the forest, a ghost in the ruins, and a storm on the battlefield. Every strike was precise, every trap flawless. She never failed. Kilira moved with deadly grace. Her tall figure was armored in black plates that reflected no light. Her long hair, silver as moonlight, flowed behind her as she walked through the jungle of the alien moon. In her hand was her spear, a weapon said to pierce even steel. Around her waist hung blades that had tasted blood from 1,000 enemies. The huntress had no fear. Fear was for prey, not for her. Her heart was cold, her mind sharp. She hunted because it was her way, her pride, her proof that she was above all others. Each kill was not only survival, but victory, a reminder that her bloodline was the strongest. This hunt was supposed to be no different. Another contract, another target, another kill. The client had paid her in rare crystals and promised more if she returned with the human's head. Humans were not rare in the galaxy anymore, but this one was strange. He had survived a battle where every other soldier had fallen. He had escaped death again and again. Some called him cursed, others called him blessed. But Kilira only saw him as prey. She studied the tracking device on her wrist. A glowing dot pulsed across the map. The human was moving north through the dense alien jungle. The forest was alive with sounds. Creatures screaming, insects buzzing, winds rushing through giant red trees. But Kilira's senses cut through it all. She could hear his footsteps, slow and tired. She could smell the faint trace of blood on the air. She smiled, a thin and cruel smile. Her prey was wounded. That would make the hunt short. Moving like a shadow, she leapt from branch to branch, never making a sound. Her eyes scanned the ground below until she saw him, a figure in torn armor, dragging himself forward, his helmet cracked, his chest plate dented, blood marked his side, but still he walked, step by step, refusing to stop. Kilira crouched on the branch, watching. Her instincts told her to strike now, to end it quickly, but something made her pause. His eyes, though tired, though broken, still burned with fire. He did not look like prey. He looked like someone who would fight even after death. She whispered to herself, "Interesting." Dropping from the tree, she landed before him with the grace of a predator. The human froze, his hand reaching for a broken blade at his belt. Kilira tilted her head, studying him like a scientist examining a rare creature. "You should have died with the others," she said in her cold voice. "But you keep moving, why?" The human raised his blade, his voice ragged but steady. "Because I refused to stop." For the first time in countless hunts, Kilira felt something stir inside her. Not fear, not pity, but curiosity. She had killed warriors stronger than him, monsters larger than ships, and yet none had looked at her with such defiance. She circled him slowly, her spear dragging across the ground, sparks flying where it struck stone. The human turned with her, never lowering his weapon. His body shook with exhaustion, but his eyes never left hers. She lunged forward, faster than the eye could follow. Her spear sliced through the air. The human blocked, but the impact sent him crashing to the ground. His weapon clattered away. Blood spilled fresh from his wound. Kilira stepped closer, raising her spear for the final strike. "It ends now," she whispered. But the human, instead of fear, instead of begging, pushed himself up again. His body trembled, his face pale, but he stood. He faced her, empty-handed, broken, but unyielding. Her spear hovered, ready to strike, yet she did not move. Something was wrong. This was not how prey behaved. This was not how a hunt was supposed to end. Kilira's heart beat faster, a rare thing for her. She tightened her grip on the spear, her eyes locked on his. She could not understand it. He was supposed to fall, to fail, to die like all the others. And yet, he refused. For the first time in her life, Kilira felt the shadow of doubt. The unbeaten huntress had found a prey who would not break, And deep inside, she realized this hunt would not be like the others. It would change everything. The jungle did not sleep. The night was alive with strange sounds, creatures screaming in the distance, insects crawling across glowing leaves, and wind shaking the tall red trees. But in all this chaos, Kilira moved with calm. Her steps were silent, her eyes sharp, her focus locked on the human. He was unlike any prey she had hunted. Normally, her targets ran in fear, hid in caves, or begged for mercy when they realized escape was impossible. But this human did not run. He walked forward, even when blood poured from his side, even when his strength failed him. He moved as if nothing in the universe could stop him. Kilira had followed him for hours, studying his movements. His body showed pain, but his spirit showed fire. He crafted traps from broken branches, sharpened stones into weapons, and marked the trees behind him as if he knew she was near. He was not fleeing blindly. He was preparing. From the high branches, Kilira watched him sit near a small fire. The flames cast shadows on his tired face. His armor was cracked, his blade chipped, his hands trembled, yet his eyes still burned with defiance. She could hear him breathing hard, yet refusing to collapse. Most prey lost their will long before their bodies failed. But this human reversed the rule. His body was broken, yet his will carried him forward. It fascinated her. It angered her. Kilira crouched above, whispering to herself, "You should have fallen already. Why do you keep rising?" The human seemed to sense her presence. His head lifted slightly, his eyes narrowing at the trees. He could not see her, but he knew she was there. "If you're going to kill me," he rasped into the darkness, "then come and finish it." The huntress's lips curved into a thin smile. His voice carried no fear, only challenge. She dropped from the branch, landing near the fire with the grace of a predator. Sparks leapt into the night air as her boots struck the ground. The human rose to his feet, swaying but refusing to fall. His broken blade was in his hand, his chest heaved with every breath. He looked like a dying man, yet he stood like a warrior. Kilira circled him, her spear gleaming in the firelight. "You are already dead," she said coldly. "You only delay the end." The human's reply was a whisper, but it cut through the night. "I delay nothing. I fight." He lunged at her with surprising speed. His broken blade slashed through the air. Kilira blocked it easily, their weapons clashing with sparks. She pushed him back, expecting him to fall, but he came again and again, each strike weaker than hers, but each strike fueled by a will she could not break. His blade struck her armor, leaving shallow marks. His fist caught her jaw. His knee slammed into her leg. The attacks were clumsy, desperate, but they carried strength born not from skill, but from refusal to surrender. Kilira shoved him hard, and he stumbled into the dirt, blood dripping from his wounds. His blade fell from his hand. For any other prey, this would be the end. Yet the human dragged himself up once more, his body shaking, his eyes blazing. "You don't understand," he said through clenched teeth. "I can't stop if I fall." Then the others who died, they died for nothing. For a moment, Kilira froze. His words pierced her mind like a blade. She had hunted many, but none had spoken like this. None had carried such weight in their voice. She could kill him now, one strike, and it would be over, but something inside her resisted. She wanted to see how far he would go, how long his spirit could endure when his body had already broken. So she lowered her spear slightly, her voice cold yet curious. "Very well. Human, show me." The human coughed blood, wiped it from his lips, and straightened his back. His body betrayed him, but his eyes never looked away. In that moment, Kilira realized the truth. He was not prey. He was not a target to be ended quickly. He was a storm standing against her, a warrior who would rather die on his feet than live on his knees. And for the first time in her long life as a huntress, she felt the thrill of a challenge. The hunt was no longer a job. It had become a battle, and she knew this human was going to change everything. The jungle air was heavy with silence. The fire between them burned low, throwing long shadows across the red trees. Kilira stood tall, her spear gleaming like a fong in the dim light. The human stood opposite her, bloodied, exhausted, yet unbroken. His broken blade shook in his grip, but his eyes remained steady. For a moment, neither moved, predator and prey locked in a quiet storm. Then Kilira struck first. She lunged forward, her spear cutting through the air with deadly precision. The human twisted aside, the blade missing his heart by inches. He swung his broken sword in return, sparks flying as steel scraped against her armor. The clash echoed through the jungle. Birds scattered from the trees, beasts growled in the distance. But here, under the firelight, it was only them, hunter and hunted, warrior and survivor. Kilira pressed forward, her strikes fast as lightning, each thrust and slash designed to end him in seconds. The human blocked what he could, dodged what he couldn't. Every strike forced him back. Every step stole his breath, yet still he did not fall. Her spear cut across his arm, blood spilling fresh. He staggered, his vision blurring, but instead of retreat, he lunged closer, driving his shoulder in her chest plate. The impact forced her back half a step. For Kilira, it was nothing. For him, it was everything. She narrowed her eyes. Her prey should already be on the ground, begging for air. Instead, he smiled, weak but defiant. "You'll have to do better," he rasped. Kilira spun her spear and struck again. This time she aimed low. The sharp tip slashed across his leg. He dropped to one knee. His sword fell from his grip. His breathing turned ragged. This should have been the end. But he reached for the dirt, his fingers curling around a jagged rock. With a roar, he swung it upward, striking her helmet with all his strength. The blow rang across the night. Kilira stumbled back a step, stunned for the first time in years. The human collapsed to the ground, gasping. His chest rose and fell, blood staining the earth. He should not have been able to stand, yet somehow he pushed himself up again. His legs shook, his arms trembled, but he stood. Kilira touched the side of her helmet, feeling the dent his strike had made. Slowly, her lips curved into something rare, a true smile, not of cruelty, but of excitement. "Good," she whispered, "very good." The human spat blood and raised his fists, weaponless now, but ready. His voice cracked, but his words were clear. "I'm not finished." The huntress circled him once more. Her eyes gleamed in the firelight. For the first time in her life, she faced prey that did not break, a target that refused to surrender. He was battered, bleeding, half dead, yet still moving. She thrust her spear forward again. The human dodged, barely. Her weapon carved a deep line into the tree behind him. He grabbed her arm with desperate strength, holding her in place for one heartbeat. Then he slammed his head against her chest plate with all he had. The impact forced her to stumble back again. Her spear nearly slipped from her grip. She steadied herself quickly, but the damage was done. He had forced her back not once, but twice. His knees gave way, and he fell. His hands pressed into the ground to hold himself up. Blood poured from his wounds. His breaths were shallow. Yet when Kilira raised her spear to finish him, he looked up with burning eyes and whispered, "Not yet." She froze, her weapon still hovering. The fire in his gaze was not the fire of desperation. It was something stronger, something deeper. It was defiance carved into his very soul. No one had ever looked at her like that. Not beasts, not soldiers, not assassins. All had fallen before her might. All had broken under her spear. But this human, this fragile, dying human, stood against her as if he were equal. Kilira's chest tightened with an emotion she did not recognize. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was respect. Lowering her weapon just slightly, she studied him, her voice soft but sharp. "Why do you keep rising? Why do you refuse the end?" The human coughed, spitting red into the dirt, and answered with a broken smile, "Because death only wins if I let it." Her grip on the spear trembled for the first time in her life. In that moment, Kilira understood. This was not a hunt anymore. This was a battle that would test both of them, a battle she had never faced before. And deep within, for the first time in countless hunts, the unbeaten huntress felt something unfamiliar, doubt. The human should already be dead, but he refused, and Kilira knew this was only the beginning. The forest was silent after the clash. Only the crackle of broken branches and the slow drip of blood from the human's wounds filled the air. Kilira stood over him, her spear gleaming. Her chest rose and fell, not from exhaustion, but from something far more rare: hesitation. She had struck him down again, her weapon cutting deep into his side. Any other prey would have stayed on the ground, lifeless or begging for mercy, but not this human. His hand pressed against the wound, his breath shallow, yet he pushed himself upright, step by step, refusing to surrender. Kilira's eyes narrowed. Her mind whispered the truth she did not want to hear. He should be dead. She circled him slowly, her footsteps deliberate. Her sharp gaze studied the tremble in his body, the weakness in his legs, the fire in his eyes. He was breaking, yes, but not in spirit. His will burned brighter with every attempt she made to crush him. The human staggered back against a tree, his voice hoarse but steady. "Is this all you are?" he asked. "A killer who hides behind her spear?" The word struck deeper than any blade. Kilira's jaw tightened. For the first time in her countless hunts, she felt the sting of insult. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever dared. She lifted her spear high, her voice sharp as steel. "You speak like a warrior, yet you crawl like prey. Do not mistake survival for strength." But even as she said the words, she felt the hollowness in them. Her hand gripped the spear tighter, as if force could silence the doubt inside her. The human coughed, blood staining his lips, yet his eyes never left hers. Strength isn't killing. Strength is standing when everything tells you to fall. The jungle winds howled through the trees, carrying his words into the night. For the first time in her long life, Kilira felt her resolve shake. She remembered her past hunts, the soldiers who screamed before they died, the beasts that fled in terror, the fugitives who begged for mercy. They were prey. All of them. She was the huntress, the predator, the executioner. And yet, this broken human refused to play the role. Kilira took a step back, confusion flickering across her usually cold face. Her mind argued against itself. Why does he still rise? Why does his spirit not break? She told herself it was foolishness, stubbornness, the weakness of humans pretending to be strong. But her heart whispered something far more dangerous: respect. The human, leaning on the tree, forced himself to his feet again. His body swayed, his face pale, but his eyes burned with defiance. He raised his broken blade, not as a weapon that could defeat her, but as a symbol that he would not bow. Kilira lowered her spear slightly. Her instinct screamed at her to finish it, to strike and end this strange challenge before it grew into something more. But another part of her wanted to see how far he could go, how much pain, how much failure, how much death he could defy. "You are not like the others," she admitted softly, almost to herself. "You are not prey." The human gave a faint smile, though blood stained his teeth. "Then stop treating me like one." The words echoed in her mind long after they were spoken. She could not deny it anymore. For the first time in her life, Kilira felt doubt. Not in her skill, not in her weapon, but in her purpose. What was she if prey could stand against her? What was victory if it came against someone who refused to lose, even in death? The firelight flickered between them, casting long shadows across the jungle floor. Predator and prey faced each other, yet neither fit the role anymore. Kilira's spear trembled slightly in her grip. Her breathing quickened, not from battle, but from something she had never known before, the fear that perhaps she was no longer the only hunter here. And deep inside her, she understood a truth she could not speak aloud. This human was not just another target. He was a mirror, reflecting everything she had tried to bury: weakness, strength, fear, and the will to fight for something beyond survival. For the first time in her endless reign as the unbeaten huntress, Kilira felt the weight of uncertainty. And in that moment of doubt, she realized this hunt was no longer about killing. It was about discovery. The jungle was heavy with silence, broken only by the soft hiss of wind through the crimson leaves. Kilira stood still, her spear in hand, her eyes locked on the human before her. He should not have been standing. His body was broken, blood staining his armor, his blade little more than a shard of steel. Yet he faced her still. Her doubts whispered like shadows in her mind. For the first time, she had hesitated. For the first time, she had wondered if this was truly prey. The human's defiance cut deeper than any wound he carried. The human shifted his stance, wobbling but steadying himself. He raised the broken blade, his voice hoarse but unyielding. "You can kill me 100 times, and I will rise 100 more. That's what you don't understand." Kilira's jaw tightened. Anger replaced hesitation. How could this fragile creature dare to challenge her legacy? She had killed warriors greater than him, enemies faster, stronger, smarter, yet none had looked at her with such fire. She lunged, her spear slicing through the air. The human dodged, barely, the weapon grazing his side. He countered with a desperate strike. His blade scraped her armor, leaving a mark. It was small, shallow, but it was the first time in years anyone had touched her armor. Kilira froze for a heartbeat. Her eyes flicked to the scratch. Her pride roared within her chest. "Impossible," she hissed. The human did not smile. He did not taunt. He simply raised his blade again, his eyes burning with the same defiance. He had turned the hunt into something else. He was not surviving. He was fighting. Blow after blow came, each one clumsy, each one weaker than hers, but they carried a rhythm, a learning. With every strike, the human adapted. He began to see the patterns of her movements, the slight tilt of her shoulders before she struck, the shift of her feet before she spun. Kilira realized too late. He was studying her. He was turning her own perfection into a weapon against her. She snarled, sweeping her spear in a deadly arc. The human ducked under it and slammed his shoulder in her chest. She stumbled back a step, rage flashing in her eyes. No prey had ever dared touch her like that. The human staggered, gasping for breath, his strength failing, yet his will unbroken. "You're fast," he admitted. "You're strong, but you're not untouchable." The words hit her harder than his strikes. She could hear her heart pounding, a sound she had almost forgotten. For the first time, she felt something close to fear. Her pride would not allow this. She would not be beaten by prey. Not now, not ever. With a roar, she leapt back, planting her spear in the ground. Her fingers tapped against the control pad on her wrist. The jungle shifted. A trap armed long ago came alive. The ground exploded beneath the human, nets of plasma and shards of energy snapping upward. A storm of light and destruction filled the clearing. Kilira stepped back, her eyes cold. "No one survives this," she whispered. The dust choked the air. Trees fell in flames. Stones split apart. For long moments, nothing moved. Kilira lowered her spear, convinced the fight was done. Her doubts faded. Her pride returned. But then, from the smoke, a figure emerged. The human crawled from the rubble, his armor burned, his skin torn, his body trembling. Yet still he stood. His blade was gone, his breath ragged, but his eyes still held the fire. Kilira's heart skipped a beat. She could not move. She could only watch as the impossible unfolded before her. He raised his hand, pointing at her, his voice broken but sharp as steel. "You will not break me." In that moment, the Huntress felt her world shift. She was no longer the predator in control. The human, broken and bloodied, had seized the rhythm of the hunt. He had turned her perfection into doubt, her certainty into fear. This was no longer a hunt. It was a battle, and Kilira knew the outcome was no longer certain. For the first time in her life, she was not the one writing the end of the story. The jungle clearing was still burning. Flames licked at the broken trees. Smoke curled into the night sky, and the air smelled of ash and blood. Kilira stood at the edge of the destruction, her spear planted firmly in the soil. Her eyes scanned the wreckage with cold certainty. No one had ever survived that trap. It was her masterpiece, designed over years of hunts, plasma nets that shredded armor, energy shards that cut through bone, a cage of fire that turned prey into ash. To her, this was not just a weapon, it was proof of her perfection. And yet, her chest was not calm. Her heart beat louder than it should. Her grip on the spear tightened. Through the haze of smoke, a sound emerged, a cough, wet and broken, but real. Her eyes widened. She leaned forward, disbelief twisting her face. The human was crawling out of the fire, his armor shattered, his skin burned, blood streaking every inch of him. His body shook as if every step tore him apart, but his head was lifted, his eyes locked on her, still carrying that fire she could not extinguish. Kailira whispered, "Impossible." He fell to his knees, his hand pressed against the dirt, his breath came in ragged gasps, his body was ruined. He should not be alive, he should not even be moving. Yet inch by inch he rose, his legs trembling, his arms shaking, but he stood. Kailira's mind roared with denial. No, this cannot be. She remembered every prey she had killed, every scream, every silence that followed. None of them had risen from her traps. None had faced her like this. She had been the shadow, the storm, the death that never failed. And now this human, weak, fragile, broken, had done what none had ever done before. He lifted his face to her, blood dripping from his lips. His voice was hoarse, but steady. "You don't get to decide when I fall." Her breath caught. She felt a heat rise in her chest that was not anger, not victory, but something alien, something dangerously close to respect. She raised her spear again, fury in her voice. "You are not strong. You are stubborn. That is all." But even as she said it, the words felt hollow. Her spear wavered in her grip. The human staggered forward, step by painful step, his hands empty, his blade lost, yet his presence filled the clearing like a storm. Every move screamed defiance. Every breath was rebellion. He was no longer prey crawling before her. He was a warrior who refused to bow. Kailira's instinct screamed at her to finish it. Strike now. In this, restore the order of predator and prey. But her heart, the heart she had buried beneath years of blood and pride, refused. Something deep inside whispered that if she killed him now, she would never escape his shadow. She spun her spear in a flourish, the air humming with its deadly song. Her voice sharp. "You will die, human, but not as prey, as my equal." The human's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "Then let's see if the Huntress can bleed." The challenge struck her deeper than his blade ever could. For the first time in her endless reign, Kailira felt the weight of equality. He had survived the impossible. He had broken her trap, not with strength of body, but with strength of will. He had shattered the foundation of her pride. And now, standing before her, broken but unyielding, he was no longer just a target. He was something far more dangerous. He was her rival. The flames crackled between them. Predator and prey had become equals, and in the silent space between heartbeats, Kailira understood a truth that chilled her to the core. This human had already changed her, and whatever happened next, nothing in her life would ever be the same. The firelight dimmed as the smoke drifted into the star-filled sky. The jungle, broken and scarred by their battle, seemed to hold its breath. Kailira stood with her spear raised, the weapon gleaming in the faint light, her eyes locked on the human. He was barely standing, his armor shattered, his body burned, blood streaking down his arms and legs. Yet he stood, his chest rose and fell with slow, painful breaths. His hands were empty, but his eyes still carried the flame that refused to die. Kailira's heart thundered in her chest. For the first time in her long life, she felt her grip weaken. Her spear, which had always felt light, now seemed heavy. The human should have been dead. Her trap should have ended him. Her strike should have broken him. But here he was, still alive, still defying her. She circled him slowly, each step echoing against the ruined earth. "You are finished," she said. Her voice was cold, but inside it trembled. "One more strike, and it ends." The human lifted his head, his lips curved into a faint, tired smile. "You've been saying that since the beginning." His voice was cracked, but steady. "But here I am, still standing." Her jaw tightened. Anger flared inside her. But beneath it was something far more dangerous. Respect. He was unlike any prey she had ever faced. Unlike any warrior, he was not stronger than her, not faster, but he carried something she could not kill. The human took a step forward. His knees threatened to collapse, but he held himself upright. "If you kill me now," he said, "I'll fall as a warrior, not prey, and you'll know the truth. Your perfect hunt has ended." His words pierced her like blades. Kalira's breath caught in her throat. She remembered every hunt, every victory, every scream that had fed her pride. But now, as she looked at him, she realized none of those victories mattered, because for the first time, she had not won. She could strike, she could drive her spear through his chest and watch him fall. It would be easy, it would restore the image of the unbeaten huntress, but another voice whispered inside her, if you do this, you lose something greater than a hunt. Her spear wavered. The firelight reflected in her silver eyes. She saw herself in him, not in body, but in spirit, the will to rise, the refusal to bow, the hunger for something more than survival. He had shown her a mirror she had never faced before. The human, blood dripping from his wounds, raised his chin. His voice was almost a whisper, but it carried through the silent jungle. End it, or accept that I am more than prey. Time seemed to stop. The jungle was silent, the fire frozen. Even the wind held back. Kalira's spear trembled in her grip. Her pride screamed to strike, but her heart refused. Slowly, she lowered the weapon. The blade touched the ground, sparks hissing against the dirt. Her chest rose and fell with a breath she did not realize she was holding. You are no prey, she said at last. Her voice was low, sharp, but it carried something new, something she had never given anyone before. You are my equal. The human closed his eyes for a moment, relief and exhaustion flooding his face. When he opened them again, there was no fear, no defiance, only a quiet respect. Kalira turned away, the firelight catching on her silver hair. Her voice carried over her shoulder. This hunt is over, but our battle is only beginning. She vanished into the shadows of the burning jungle, her footsteps silent. The human staggered but remained standing, alone in the clearing, broken but unbowed. He looked at the stars above, whispering to himself, "She spared me, but not because she was merciful, because she saw me." And in that moment, he understood the galaxy would never be the same. The unbeaten huntress had failed, not in defeat, but in choice, and that choice had given birth to something greater than victory. A bond between predator and prey, hunter and warrior, alien and human. Something that could reshape the stars themselves.